If the sky gave you a secret and said, "Do not spend it," would you test the edge of that command just to hear how thunder sounds when it's angry? Stay with me till the end and trust me, you won't believe how this ends, because this is not about lightning. It's about the first time a man tried to outsmart his own shadow, and the shadow took notes. Listen, in the town of Irun, where red dust powders ankles and the evening drums are the town clock, there lived a priest named Awele. He was not old. He was not young. He was that dangerous age in the middle when a person is praised enough to forget who taught them. People came from 9 rivers away to see him, women hoping for children, traders praying for luck, and boys asking that their football dreams outrun poverty. Awele's fame grew because he solved things. Crops listened to him. Fever obeyed him. Even stubborn goats decided to be reasonable around him. Irun's shrine of Risa Oko, guardian of harvests, sat beneath a silk cotton tree that wore birds like jewelry. Inside the shrine, in a shadowed alcove, lay the calabash of dawn. It was carved from a gourd so old the elders said it was hollowed before the first drum learned to speak. This calabash held offerings that belonged not to Awele, not to the king, not even to the town, but to the one who braided daylight, the Most High, whose names are uncountable. The rule was simple. The calabash stayed sealed between sunset and sunrise. No man, no woman, no chief, no priest opened it after dark. Offerings went in by day, yams, cowries, thanks, promises. By night the calabash rested, and the night rested too. But the world had been unkind to Awele's beginning. He was born the year the river ate 3 farms and spat stones. His mother sold roasted plantain at the market and counted hope like coins that never added up. When Awele was 10, a wandering diviner looked at the pattern of cowries on a mat and said, "This boy has hands that unlock. See how he watches doors." So the town trained him in ritual and wisdom and patience, and for years Awele was obedient. He rose before dawn, swept the shrine, washed his mind with proverbs, and poured palm oil for the spirits. He learned that gratitude is a rope strong enough to pull a person through a bad season. He learned that silence can be louder than a gong. He learned many things. He also learned how much power lives in proximity to holy things. People brought offerings with shaking hands, whispering their fears into a bowl that seemed to drink worry. They left with light in their eyes and believed Awele had put it there. They gave him names that tasted like praise: the soft rains, the door that opens, the one who remembers the way back. Praise is sweet until you forget it is borrowed sugar. Awele began to think the sweetness was his. The trouble started small, like a pebble in a shoe. One market day, a tired mother came late, her wrapper dust-streaked, her baby crying a thin metal sound. She placed 2 cowries into the calabash and whispered, "Please." Awele's heart turned. 2 cowries were an insult to desperation. He wanted to help. He told himself, what if I just borrow a handful of cowries from the calabash after dark, buy medicine for the baby, and return it triple by next week when the cocoa money comes? After all, does not kindness also please the Most High? If you have to explain your kindness to your conscience for too long, it is commerce wearing a mask. That evening the town settled. Fires hushed to red. Crickets stitched the night together. Awele waited. He listened to his own breath until it became another village sound. Then he slid the shrine door. The moon threw a knife of light across the floor. He stood before the calabash of dawn. "Just a handful," he told the empty room. "A seed, not a harvest." He broke the seal. The scent that rose from the calabash was not yam or oil or coin. It was the smell of promises. It smelled like a first child's laugh, like the moment a boat sees land, like rain deciding to be generous. It was heavy and light at once, and it made all dizzy with the possibility of being the man who could touch such a thing and walk away unchanged. His fingers found cowries. He took 5. No thunder. He took 10. No shadow moved. He took 15. The room stayed ordinary. He closed the lid and resealed the cord with a priest's knot. Perfect, tight, faithful looking. He exhaled and smiled a small, scared smile. The baby would have medicine. Balance would be restored next week. No harm done. When morning came, the mother returned, eyes rimmed with red. "The fever broke," she said, astonished. He slept. She held up her child as if he were a sunrise. Awele felt pride step into his chest and sit down like a king on a comfortable throne. "See," he told himself, "the Most High does not count generosity like a tax collector. The Most High understands." But the Most High also remembers. The world is not an ocean where anything disappears. It is a calabash. Everything clinks. A week later, cocoa money did not come. The trader's truck broke an axle between villages and spilled bags like wounded animals. Prices sank. Awele could not return the cowries. He opened the calabash again very late, speaking soft to the dark. "Double next week," he said, as if making an appointment with mercy. He stole another handful. The seal went back on. His hands did not shake this time. That is how habits adjust the size of our fear. First you flinch, then you nod, then you forget you ever flinched. People began to notice small wrongness. A rooster crowed at noon until it went hoarse. A pot of millet refused to boil, though the fire licked it greedily. In the sky, a thin line appeared, the color of metal, and did not go away. Elders muttered. Children were braver and asked questions. Awele performed rituals to soothe unease. He talked louder. He added incense. He danced longer. The praise names returned, and he took them like medicine for an illness he would not confess. One night, the king of Iran, Kabiyesi Adeyemi, sent for Awele. The king's palace sat on a hill as if it wanted to listen to the whole world. Adeyemi's face was carved by weather and responsibility. He did not waste words. "Griot's ear hears before the market," he said. "I hear that winds blow strangely around the shrine. I hear goats fear their own shadows. I hear the calabash feels lighter." Awele steadied his breath. "Your Majesty, winds are playful. Goats are philosophers. The calabash is as it has always been." Adeyemi watched him for a long moment. "I will come tomorrow at dawn to offer thanks for the successful planting," he said. "We will open the calabash together, as my father did with your teacher." All bowed. Inside, a drum he had never wanted to hear started beating. Tomorrow, together. He walked home beneath trees that suddenly seemed to lean in and confer about him. The moon looked like the unblinking eye of an ancestor who has heard all the clever lies. He told himself many stories that night. He told himself he was owed a small debt for tireless service. He told himself that what he took was never for himself, but always for others. He told himself that the king's suspicion was an insult his dignity should correct with proof. He told himself so many things he forgot to sleep. Near midnight, he went to the shrine again. If he could just rearrange the offerings, disguise the missing weight with folded cloth, perhaps. But when he slid the door, a wind stepped out as if it had been waiting. It lifted his garments and moved through him like a memory. The silk cotton tree above the shrine shivered and rained down flowers that smelled like warnings disguised as perfume. Awele knelt before the calabash. "Forgive," he said, to the air, to the dark, to the silence that keeps score. He reached for the lid. The lid was warm. He pulled, slow, expecting the now familiar breath of promises. Instead, he heard a sound like a string pulled too tight. From inside the calabash, something pulled back. He froze. "Awele," a voice said, not loud, not soft, simply present. It came from everywhere and nowhere, like water speaking through a pipe. "What do you give when you have taken what was not yours?" Awele's mouth dried. "I will return it," he whispered. "When?" the voice asked. "Soon. Soon as a village without roofs," the voice said. "It looks like a place. It shelters nobody." He bowed till his forehead touched the floor. Shame is heavy, but it does not fill holes. He lifted the lid. This time there were no cowries. The calabash was full of something else altogether. A clear, trembling light like the kind inside a candle before a match remembers it is fire. It hummed. It sang in a key his childhood knew. It made his bones ache with recognition. From within that light, images rose and fell. People he had blessed, fields he had prayed over, a narrow alley where he once gave his only mango to a hungry boy. Every goodness he had ever offered hovered there. Then he saw something that turned his stomach cold. The tired mother's face, the baby's soft hand opening and closing around nothing. The fever had broken that first time, yes, but now the child coughed again in the night, a cough shaped like debt. Awele understood. You cannot steal the foundation of a house and expect the roof to keep smiling. Your good deeds become receipts. He closed the lid, shaking. He tied the seal badly. He left the shrine, forgetting to slide the door shut. Before dawn, he ran to the palace. He wanted to confess to the king, to ask for judgment before the morning came marching with its brutal clarity. But the king was asleep. The guards did not wake him. Awele sat on the palace steps with the night for company and tried not to be afraid of the day. Dawn arrived like a verdict. The town gathered at the shrine. Birds flew in circles as if deciding whether to witness or not. The king came, wearing a robe the color of patient water. Elders stood like trees that had seen too many storms to be impressed by clouds. The tired mother was there too, the baby on her back now breathing with a whistle. Awele's hands were steady as stone when they shouldn't have been. That is the thing about fear. Sometimes it holds you so tight you stop trembling. He looked at the calabash and saw, with that new cruel clarity, how light it truly was. The king laid his hand on the lid. "We give thanks," he said to the people. "We open what belongs to the one who gives days." He looked at Awele. Together, they untied the seal. The lid rose. The calabash was empty. Not even the smell of promises remained. Emptiness has a smell too. It smells like iron and old songs. A wind took the silence from the people and tossed it into the trees. Someone dropped a gourd. It cracked like an accusation. The king did not look at Awele at first. He looked at the people who had trusted the rituals that held their days like baskets hold yams. "Owl," he said finally. He did not need to ask the question. It stood between them, wearing Owl's face. Owl opened his mouth to say forgive, but something moved at the threshold of the shrine. The silk cotton tree's shade pulled itself together like cloth being gathered by a careful hand. It rose, taller than a man, taller than the king, and took the shape of something that had watched humanity for too long and could imitate us perfectly if it wished. The shadow spoke with the voice Owl had heard in the night. "When a priest steals from God," it said, "he does not lose what he stole. He loses the place where it could be safely kept." The crowd fell back. The tired mother clutched her baby. The king stepped forward, jaw set, not afraid, simply counting the cost. Owl felt the ground tilt under him. His knees wanted to run, but had forgotten how. The shadow pointed at the empty calabash. "Your hands are not empty," it told Awele. "Your hands are full of the debts you have created." Awele looked down. He saw nothing. Then he felt it. The weight. Invisible, yes, but present as any stone. He tried to lift his hands. They rose slow as if dragging a river. The shadow turned to the people. "A shrine is a promise the village makes to reality, that we will not lie about what holds us together." It looked at the king. "Choose." The air tightened like a drumskin. This was not a choice between punishing a man or sparing him. It was the older choice. How to stitch a tear so the cloth does not rip again when the wind returns. The king's eyes moved once from Owl to the calabash to the silk cotton tree. Then he nodded, the kind of nod that becomes history in the mouths of griots. "Bring the drum," Adeyemi said. "Bring the white cloth. Bring the Ofo staff of truth." People scattered to obey. Awele stood inside his fear like a person inside rain, wet through, certain he would never be dry again. As the drum arrived and the staff of truth gleamed in the new sun, the king spoke for the village. "Truth is not for shame," he said. "Truth is for repair." He fixed his gaze on Awele. "You will speak, all of it, as if thunder were grating your words." Awele swallowed. He opened his mouth. The first confession came thin. The second came thicker. By the seventh, his voice cracked. By the 10th, he was crying without tears, the kind of crying men learn in places where we are not allowed to break loudly. When he finished, no one clapped. Truth is not a performance. The shadow listened. Then it did something no one expected. It softened, not kindly, not cruelly, simply softened, like a knot that knows the rope has learned something. It gestured to the tired mother. "Come," it said. "Place the baby's breath inside the calabash." She hesitated, then leaned forward, lifted the lid, and hummed a song. The baby's breath came out in clouds you could almost see. The calabash caught them, kept them, made a sound like a small river agreeing with a stone. The shadow turned to the king. "Repair begins with the smallest truth that can still carry weight." The wind shifted. Awele smelled rain that had not yet decided to fall. He felt, for the first time since he broke the seal, that tomorrow might exist and not bite. But repair has a price, and the shadow had not named it yet. The first theft is never of coins. It is of boundaries. And boundaries, once stolen, do not forgive without witnesses. What would you do if your whole village watched your secret step into the light? Is confession enough? When the shadow demanded repair, the whole village stood as if their hearts were calabashes themselves, waiting to see if they would crack or hold. And Awele, his body bent under invisible weight, knew that this moment was not about what he had stolen, but about what kind of story the village would tell of itself when the dust settled. And the king, Kábíyèsí Adéyẹmí, raised the Ofo staff of truth so that its carved symbols glowed in the morning sun, declaring, "The staff does not punish, it remembers." And today memory will decide whether this priest belongs to his people or to his shame. And the shadow, tall as the silk cotton tree, nodded as if satisfied that the human voice had finally spoken sense. Then the king asked, "Awele, what do you owe?" And the priest, trembling but steady-eyed, answered, "I owe more than cowries. I owe the village the boundary I broke. I owe God the trust I shredded. I owe myself the honesty I sold for comfort." And the crowd gasped, not because of the words, but because his voice no longer sounded like the voice of a priest or a thief. It sounded like rain on thirsty soil, humble, desperate, cleansing. And the shadow stretched its finger of darkness toward the calabash and said, "Repair begins when what was taken is not replaced with things, but with truth lived daily. Awele, if you would be restored, you must become the keeper not of wealth, but of emptiness. For only an empty vessel can remind men to never steal what belongs to God." And the king ordered that from that day, Awele would remain the shrine's priest, but stripped of all right to touch offerings. He would sweep, sing, and guard, but never again would his hands open the calabash, not even by day, and some thought this mercy, some thought this worse than death. But the shadow's silence approved, for the silence of spirits is louder than applause. Then the mother stepped forward, the tired woman with her child, and she placed her hand on Awele's shoulder, whispering, "Return to us not with miracles, but with honesty. That is all we ask." And the people murmured like a tide agreeing, and suddenly, as if the world itself exhaled, the thin metallic line in the sky that had haunted them for weeks dissolved into blue. The rooster crowed at the right time, the millet pot boiled with ordinary joy, and everyone felt that something torn had been stitched, though the seam would always be visible. And that seam was the lesson. Boundaries once broken leave scars, but scars remind us of survival. As for Awele, he kept his place at the shrine, silent, sweeping, humming, his hands forever empty. And in time, children grew up pointing at him and asking, "Why does the priest never touch the calabash?" And elders would answer, "Because he touched it once too many times. And now his empty hands keep us all safe." And the story became larger than the man, until Awele himself was less important than the warning his life carried. And yet in the quiet of his own heart he discovered a strange peace, for in never holding the sacred again, he had become sacred himself. A reminder carved in flesh that holiness is not power, but trust. The shadow returned to the silk cotton tree and folded itself back into the earth, leaving only the faint smell of promises fulfilled. And the king declared, "This is our covenant, truth before shame, repair before punishment, memory before forgetting." And drums thundered, not for celebration, but to mark the village's vow to never again let praise blind them to boundaries. And so it was that the man who once stole from God became the man who daily guarded God's gift without touching it. And in that paradox lay the real miracle, for what he lost in privilege he gained in purpose. And the village thrived with fields fat and laughter loud, and travelers who came to Irun heard the tale and carried it home, telling it as proof that even when thunder is angry, mercy can still arrive like rain after fire. And though Awele's name faded into proverb, his lesson endured. Never let your shadow learn your secrets before your truth does. For the first theft is of boundaries, and the last gift is of honesty. And that is how the priest who stole from God found redemption not in escape but in staying, not in power but in emptiness, not in miracles but in memory. And for you watching this now, what would you choose? Power that blinds or humility that heals? Empty hands or heavy debts? Truth spoken before thunder or silence that breaks a village? Tell me in the comments and let your words be part of this story. If this ending surprised you, if it left you thinking, like and share this story so more people can hear it, subscribe for more tales like this. And remember, when trust is broken, repair is possible, but only if you dare to live the truth out loud.